Hello, I am Lois Krause, the practice leader in HR compliance for KardasLarson Human Resource Solutions. KardasLarson began in 2004 as a boutique women-owned consulting consortium. We focus on developing and delivering strategic human resource solutions to enhance business results by leveraging your greatest asset, your workforce. We provide our HR expertise based on your unique needs and provide a variety of options from being your part-time HR expert to your full-time strategic HR partner. Today, I would like to introduce you to my guest, Michael Wilson. Michael is a digital strategist who helps organizations to build and protect their brands online. His services include web development, social media strategy, and IT consulting for small businesses. We have invited Michael to join us to talk about some of the high-profile cybersecurity issues that made national news during the election coverage, how some of these things happen, and how businesses should be adapting to the new technological challenges of protecting their data and their reputations. Many of us have spent the last month hearing almost daily stories related to the contents of emails from the Clinton campaign. So Michael, how did these emails get out in the first place?
Thanks, Lois. So I think it's important to keep in mind that most of the emails that are out there that have been making national news, the ones that were covered by WikiLeaks, were not from Hillary Clinton's private server, even though that was its own separate problem. They came from one of her staff members, John Podesta, who was her campaign chief and Bill Clinton's chief of staff. This was a breach of his personal email, his Gmail account, and tens of thousands of his emails going back quite a while got out. So I'll take a look a little bit at how that happened to explain for others how that can be avoided. So he got a phishing email attempt. It was an email that appeared to be from Google telling him that his account had been compromised and he should change his password immediately. It wasn't actually from Google. It was a group of Russian hackers who were trying to get his account information. And he was rightly suspicious when he got that email. He had doubts over the authenticity of it, and he decided he would send it to a number of people in the campaign for verification, including their IT help desk person. And that person made a big blunder. That person told him that it was legitimate, that it was safe, and that he should, to his credit, he gave him the right advice, which was to go through Google directly, go to their security center, and reset his password, and then he should have two-factor authentication turned on. Unfortunately, John Podesta didn't do that. He went back to his original email, the phished email that he got, and he took the bait. He clicked on the link that he had been offered, which brought him to a site. It would have looked like Google, and when he put in his account information, they got him. They got his details. So at that point, this collective of Russian hackers have his emails. They eventually gave them over to WikiLeaks to publish. And so at this point, they're out in the wild. And day by day through most of October, there were hundreds or thousands of his emails coming out each day as WikiLeaks released them in pieces. And people were reading them. Journalists and anyone from the general public could be reading these. And in one of those emails, an email from 2015, he had asked someone else in the Clinton campaign what his iCloud password was, his Apple ID that would get him into his iPhone or his iPad, any of those devices. And that person responded by sending him in plain text in the email his login information. And from that point in 2015 until October of this year, that password apparently never changed. So when these WikiLeaks posts are up there and people are reading them, somebody came across it and said, what the heck, let's try it. And they go to iCloud and they used that still active working login information to get into his iPad and iPhone, wipe them remotely. And then they started thinking, well, where else might he have used this password? And they went to Twitter, typed in the same password he was using for iCloud, used it to get into his Twitter account because it was the same. They went, said vote Trump 2016, sort of publicly embarrassed him that way. And this is in many ways the worst case scenario for something that could happen these days to someone's digital life.
So let's review the situation one step at a time, okay, to explain just what went wrong and how these things could have been avoided, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, we should start with the email. How does phishing work?
Sure. I mean, phishing might be with a PH, but it's the same sort of thing you do out there on your boat. You put a lot of lures out and you cast them out hoping that you'll get somebody to bite. It's become a really common tactic for attackers looking to gain access to things like bank details, email accounts, iCloud, other cloud services to use what are often called spear phishing operations. And there have been a lot of high-profile victims recently, not just John Podesta, but Colin Powell. Many of the celebrities last year, including Jennifer Lawrence, Rihanna, whose nude photos were leaked after attackers got into their iCloud accounts and were able to access their personal pictures on their iPhones. And attackers send these emails to people. They appear to be legit. They appear to be from real companies, often have a fearful message to them about your account security or protection, that kind of thing. And typically they have URLs inside them or malware of some kind that when you click or when you open, something happens that those hackers want to happen. Helps them capture your information or load software onto your computer. So in the Podesta example, that would have been something very much like this one that you see on the left of your screen, where it's a message that looks like it's from Google. The subject matter says Google government-backed attackers may be trying to steal your password. Sounds very threatening. They offer you a link at the bottom. At a quick glance, most people would think, well, that's from Google, and I better go fix my account. My account's in danger. On the example on the right, that's coming from within a few hours of Trump being announced as our president-elect. The same group of Russian hackers that went after John Podesta put out a bunch of emails targeting think tanks, other non-government organizations, a lot of politically connected folks trying to scare them. They have election-related headlines, information. The one on the right is from an already compromised Harvard email account. So these Russians were controlling this particular harvard.edu account. And it says, follow this secure paper to find out what really happened during the election. We're pleased to share our findings with our supporters. They even give you a PIN number to make you feel very secure. It all seems real. And it says, thanks from the Clinton Foundation. And it's an eFax link appearing to be a real PDF that someone had sent you. But it's not. If you'd opened that email and opened it in Microsoft Office, the ability for Office to run macros would have just immediately run and basically installed a Trojan on your computer that would give, in this case, these Russians, remote access to your computer, which for a lot of government-connected folks in these think tanks and other organizations that were targeted right after the election, I'm sure they got some of those people and they got access to those systems. So it's a really scary thing, and it's important to be clear that these attacks don't involve hacking Apple, Google, or other services. Phishing is a form of social engineering, and the victim is really tricked into willingly handing over their personal information or access to their computer.
Okay, well, don't you think if somebody gave you a PIN number right in the email that it would be a little fishy? I know I would.
You'd hope so.
You'd hope so. You'd think that
but it's one of those things that happens, and when it seems immediate and it seems like, I better act on this right now, a lot of people just throw some of that logic out the window and they just click. They just, go for it.
Okay. So with that in mind, how do you deal with that kind of attack?
Sure. So spear phishing emails work because they're believable. That's the really important thing. And some of these statistics are incredible. People only open 3% of spam email, yet they open 70% of spear phishing attempts. And then 50% of those who open spear phishing emails click on the link within the email. And it's a ridiculously high number, especially compared to 5% on mass mailings. As someone involved in email marketing, I wish people clicked on 50% of the emails that a marketer sent them. It's like a dream come true. So, it's people are doing this, and the last statistic there says most people click on a phishing link within 1 hour of receiving the email. So again, that underscores the immediacy, the fact that people feel like there was a threat. So the first way that you can sort of deal with this kind of thing is asking yourself, did I initiate this request? A lot of times these are emails imploring you to reset your password or to check on your bank account or things like that. If you didn't go to that company and set that email request, or you didn't click, forgot my password and start this chain of events, it's right for you to be suspicious right away. There are some legitimate emails out there that will just come out of the blue, but if you get one out of the blue, you should at least be skeptical. And then, I say look before you click. If you hover your mouse over any button or text link, you can see the URL right in the lower left-hand corner of your browser. And to a lot of people, that's just going to look like a really confusing long string of information. But the thing you're most interested in checking is to make sure that the domain name, that part just before and after the dot in .com, should be what you'd expect. If you're expecting an email from Google, it should be from google.com. It shouldn't be from Google with 3 O's or with 2 L's. It shouldn't be from thegooglemail.com, things like that where it might at a glance look real, but it's probably from a fake domain. So, again, I'm sympathetic. A lot of those domains look really confusing, but unless you're absolutely positive when you read it that it's real, again, it's okay to be skeptical. And the big takeaway is don't take the bait. If a service is emailing you with concerns over your account, go through their website directly. You don't have to take that link that they gave you. Go through the service directly. Go to Facebook, go to Google, go to Twitter, follow their account recovery solutions, follow their security steps, reset your password there, whatever it might be, but don't do what John Podesta did, which was take the link he was given. Go there directly.
Yeah, but wasn't he told not to take the link, to go directly to the website that the IT guy gave him?
He was told. Like I said, the IT guy did one thing very wrong, which was authenticating the email in a sense, telling him it was real. But the advice he gave was right, which was turn on two-factor and make sure that you go directly to the site. He even gave him the exact link to Google Security Center. So, this happens all the time. You give somebody the best possible advice, but they're the ones who ultimately have to follow through on doing it the right way.
Right. Okay, so beyond doing your best not to fall for a scam, what else can you do to protect your accounts?
Sure, I tell this to everyone I possibly can, not just clients, but to family members, everyone I surround myself with. Turn on two-factor authentication. It's something that's been rising in popularity. You might already be using it on some of your devices. But if the idea of having a password is one factor of authentication, one way of proving your identity is putting in your password, two-factor authentication is that second layer of security. So various types of proving who you are. There's forms of knowledge like a password, a PIN, a secret question, things like that. There's things that you possess like a magnetic strip card, an RFID chip, a physical key, something like that, or biometrics like your fingerprint, voice print, iris scan, anything like that. So typically for web applications, when we're talking about implementing a second factor of authentication, they're relying on the fact that 90% of American adults now have smartphones. So they feel fairly confident in a way that they didn't even 5 years ago to say, okay, we assume we can set up your phone through an SMS, text message, or through an app to give you these codes, these short-term codes that often last only 90 seconds to maybe 2 minutes, where, if you try and sign in from a new device, and I'll emphasize that they're unrecognized devices, so you don't have to put it in every time you log in, but they're looking for new devices that you haven't logged into your account from before. So hopefully you don't get badgered with these requests. But if somebody tried to log into your account from maybe Russia or China or elsewhere in the world that is not your iPad, your laptop, your phone, it's going to force them to put in this code that's being sent to your phone. And so two-factor authentication should really be enabled on any service you use that offers it. Social media, banking, email, productivity apps like Dropbox or OneDrive or anything like that where your data is being stored or sent. You want to make sure that you have two-factor turned on if they enable it. I've got a full guide on my website. I'll link in the description of the video to a full getting started guide for two-factor authentication. And it's really, really important. John Podesta's hack, this hugely embarrassing, problematic issue for the Clinton campaign, could have been entirely avoided if he had just turned on two-factor authentication, because even though the bad guys got his password, even though he fell for the phishing attack, they still wouldn't have had what they needed to log into his account.
Wow. So do small business owners really need to worry about this type of thing? I mean, no one would want to bother with their emails, right?
Yeah, it's something a lot of people think, and it brings comfort to some, like, who am I, or I've got nothing to hide. You hear a lot of those kind of things. And the problem is that most of these attacks are really widespread and indiscriminate. A lot of these kind of attacks are just blasted out there, and they're looking to catch anybody that they can. The famous cases are always going to make the news, but there are millions of these phishing emails sent out every year because of that high success rate that I referenced earlier. Many of these attacks are looking to steal or infect from as many systems as they possibly can, and they go after the lowest hanging fruit. So it's one of those things where often you can get caught up in that net even if you don't have anything of particular value. The bad guys don't always know that. They don't know always what they're going after or who they're going after.
Okay, so what can business owners and senior managers learn from this?
Sure. So I say all the time, security is that one area in technology where you want to stay as close to the bleeding edge as you possibly can. You almost never need the latest and greatest phone or computer or other systems, but if there's a way to improve your security, it's something that you should really do your best to implement. Remember that hackers are going after the weakest targets out there, certainly the average person or the below average person, and you want to keep yourself at a higher tier of security than those targets are using. And there's a few ways you can do that. The first is make sure that you stay updated. You want to be running the latest versions of any software that you have, operating systems, things like that. A huge percentage of incoming attacks are trying to exploit out-of-date software. So if you're running the latest version, you're running the safest version in the vast majority of cases. Another thing that you want to really keep in mind is that it's a good idea to invest in strong company-wide systems like virus protection and firewalls and a lot of these other IT buzzwords that you hear. But it's really important to think of the people in your organization first. If you're only as strong as your weakest link, usually it's some form of human error that's the biggest liability to your organization.
Okay, so what can the average small company do to prevent this type of problem?
Sure. You want to develop and effectively communicate internal policies for managing company data and shared accounts like your social media. Get employees to buy into the values that protect the company. From the bottom of the organization up, there has to be a feeling within your organization that it's everyone's job to care about security. It's on everyone's job description, from the janitor all the way up to the CEO. You have to think of it that way because everybody's buy-in is required. If it's just one person, as you saw in the Podesta example, one person is enough to bring the whole thing down. So you really have to think about it that way and think about it in a comprehensive sense. You're much more likely to suffer a breach due to laziness or someone putting convenience over security than you are because you didn't buy the big security package. The classic example that's a little bit dated at this point, but people going out the back door that's exit only to smoke, and people get in the habit of putting a rock in the door to keep it propped open. If your employees get in habits that are convenient for them, that doesn't help your security. So it's really important to survey your employees, figure out how your systems work for them, what they view as a headache, what they consider a hassle to be, and design systems that will work for them so that they won't circumvent your security in a way to try to be more productive or more efficient. You want to make sure that your systems work for them so that they're not avoiding the security that you've put up to protect everyone.
Okay, so on an individual level, what are some best practices for improving the security of your accounts and devices?
Yeah, preparation is really key. It's going into this whole thing with the right mindset. And typically, the rule number one is don't let one compromised account lead to that rolling effect where all of your accounts get compromised. In the example of John Podesta, his email got broken into, which led to his iCloud being compromised, which led to his Twitter being compromised. And it was just like one thing after another. That, being safe starts with having a unique password on every single account in your life. And everyone groans when you tell them that. Nobody wants to hear it. They sort of know that it's true, but it sounds like such a pain. And it is. The average person's got probably a few hundred accounts between their personal life and their professional life, and it's a huge hassle. No question about that. I highly recommend using some sort of a password manager like LastPass, 1Password. There are a few of them out there that essentially act as vaults for your passwords. You can take them with you with your smartphone. The common criticism you hear for that as well, you're creating a single point of failure, and if they get into that, then they get into everything. But those apps are really good, and they've been well tested to make sure that it's hard to get into them. and they've got multiple layers of security that go even beyond two-factor in some cases, of really making sure that you're the only one who can get to your passwords. In the grand scheme of things, nobody's 100% safe all the time. It's just about following best practices and trying, as I've said before, to make sure you're safer than the average person. Make sure that you're operating at the highest tier of security you possibly can. So if unique passwords are something you can't remember, then you still need to have them, and make sure that you use some form of password manager to have unique passwords and to store them so that you can pull them back up. It's just a really important thing to have unique passwords. As you saw in the Podesta example, his password was runner, as in someone who runs a marathon, 456. And that was his password apparently for his iCloud and his Twitter. It's been well publicized and heavily mocked that he needed someone to email him a reminder of what that password was. But really, you want to make sure that you're using really complex passwords and a unique one everywhere. On any of your devices. Oh, sure.
Sorry. I was just going to say, don't they make systems where they'll tell you how strong your password is and they won't allow it to be made, a password if it's too weak?
Yeah, that's great, especially on some websites that will give you that sort of indicator, like a traffic light, red, yellow, green, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There are plenty of those. I use LastPass myself as my password manager. That one gives you all kinds of tools built into it to they'll reset passwords for you automatically. Like you just press a button like change my password and they'll do the login process for you. They'll trigger that reset and they'll set it to something completely random and highly complex, which is great because ultimately you don't really care what the password is. You're just having this app essentially copy and paste it for you, which is really great when it happens in a secure environment like they're providing. So that's a great solution. But yeah, that's one of my big takeaways is you always want to be operating at as high of a tier of security as a given service or device will allow. So on your personal devices, you want to make sure that you're securing the lock screen. It sounds obvious, but somewhere along the line, people forgot that the lock screen is called that because it's meant to be locked. Your iPhone is not meant to open just by swiping it open. You want to make sure that if your phone has a fingerprint reader, you've activated it. If you've got an older smartphone that doesn't have one, or you just don't want to bother with your fingerprint, have a password, have a PIN, have something. And that goes for all of your devices, not just your modern touchscreen ones, but your PCs. Make sure that the sign-in screen requires you to sign in and not just press enter or open it up. So the big thing is you are the only one who should be using your devices at work, at home. Make sure you're the only one who can sign in to the places where all of your data is. And the bigger picture takeaway, my general rule is always use the strongest form of protection that's offered to you. If a service offers two-factor authentication, go ahead and enable it. If your phone enables your fingerprint to be read, go ahead and use it. Just try and make the best effort that you can to secure your devices with the best tier option available through that given thing. And thankfully, many, many services out there are rising to the challenge, offering two-factor and other things like that. So as we go forward, just if there's one type of technology to keep yourself up on, it's security, and just try and do the best that you can. Often these things cost you some time, but they often don't cost money. So it's really a matter of having the right mindset and preparing yourself to be more secure.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for this wonderful information. Although it was a bit scary to hear, it's very valuable to all businesses, no matter what the size. And thank you for watching this KardasLarson production. We encourage you to follow KardasLarson on LinkedIn and Twitter to receive information on future blogs, compliance updates, and our speaking engagements. And please subscribe to our KardasLarson YouTube channel to see our latest videos as we publish them.